In this opportunity, we will learn about the Costa Rica location for Dynamics 365 Business Central. The Costa Rica location is downloaded directly from the app source. This means that it is certified by Microsoft. When we install the localization, it will bring us different fields and functionalities that will allow us to comply with each of the fiscal requirements required by the Costa Rican Tax Authority. First of all, let's review a couple of initial configurations to get to know the benefits of localization. After that, we are going to go to an operational transactional flow and see the behavior of the functionalities, and finally the topic of reporting, electronic stamping, and much more. We are going to start first in the purchasing module and the supplier tab. In the supplier file, we have created different fields that will allow us to characterize our suppliers in a fiscal way. For example, here we can select if it is a legal card, a physical ID, NAITE, passport, any other type of identification. Here we can add the identification number, and in addition to that, we will also be able to relate the type of tax regime. What would be the type of tax regime? Whether it is a simplified tax regime or a traditional regime. Also, the type of taxpayer, whether it is large, whether it is general, or if it is simplified. We will also be able to select if this supplier, or if we are transacting with a tax credit, by activating this checkbox in the suppliers file. This will be inherited in the purchase invoice, and any invoice or transaction made to the supplier will be marked with the tax credit. This is a suggestion. It can be modified within the document. We are also going to find the ISR withholding. As a suggestion, we are going to be able to associate it, and in this section we can create as many withholdings as we need. For this example, we have two withholding codes. In this case, the one for 25%. We indicate to accept. We will also find these same fields in our customers file. And we will be able to characterize our clients by indicating the type of identification, the number, also by way of suggestion, the withholdings, the tax regime, the type of taxpayer. On the other hand, if this customer transacts with an electronic ticket, as a suggestion, we are going to recommend it and in the document. And in the document, the electronic ticket will be marked when we call the client. This is totally modifiable within the document. In addition to this, in our product file, we are going to be able to relate what would be the additional tax. For example, here enter a particular product, and we will see that this product has a goods VAT of 13%. We can see the different VATs that we have, if it's capital VAT, if it's service VAT, if it's special, if it's any other type of VAT. If it is special, if it is any other type of VAT, that of Article 9 of the Law 9635, and any other code. The additional tax, we will be able to add it to those products that require this type of tax, that need to carry this type of tax. For example, the selective consumption tax. We can create as many codes as we need, and that way of suggestion in the documents. That is to say, we can modify it within the document. Now we are going to create a small operational transactional flow, and we are going to start with a purchase and see the behavior of the different functionalities. Now we go to the purchase module, and we will generate different invoices to see the development in terms of taxes and withholdings, and additional fields in the purchasing module. Let's start with a new purchase invoice. Selecting the supplier number, selecting or typing the invoice number. Here we can select if it is a tax credit, if the purchase is not subject to withholding tax, or if it is an import. Remember that the tax credit is given by supplier's suggestion. So we can modify it and add it here in the purchase invoice. Add it here in the purchase invoice. We are going to select 3 products, in this case a service. And the system brings me as a suggestion the withholdings, how we configure it in the suppliers file. Here we select the quantities. Here we have the service tax, and we are going to expand a little bit the tax table. And we have different types of taxes. The ones that are goods, the remittance taxes, which have a different behavior and a different calculation. Those of service, capital goods, assets of law 9,635.50. And in this case, we are not going to show the withholding taxes. In this case, I will select a special VAT, let us say 4%. And the additional tax, which is also given by the date of the product, in this case, I will select it. Okay, before we register this invoice, let's see the accounting and calculation. Accounting and calculation level that generates me this purchase invoice. In VAT movements, we are going to find the different calculations of the general taxes and also the calculation of the general taxes and also the calculation of the income withholding tax or income withholding tax. Having a base, the amount of the withholding as well as the selective consumption tax, the base and the amount. In accounting movements, we will be able to visualize the distribution of the amounts to each of the accounting accounts. For example, here we have the selective consumption tax, which goes to this account 5,616. This means that it is totally parameterizable. That is to say, we indicate to the system at what time and what amount goes to each of the accounts. We also see related a dimension, type of accounting document. In this case, inventory invoices on credit. This dimension, and I return the purchase invoice. We can associate it to the invoice, and we have different values as local authorized taxes, local service recorded, and this control for the subject of the reports. Once we verify that everything is correct, we indicate register. Here we click on register. And our invoice is saved in a purchase invoice history. Here we can recreate again the accounting movements. Remember, they are associated with the dimension, and that dimension travels to each of the reports by accounting account. Let's create another purchase invoice. Ready? Here we have it pre-designed. And we enter to the invoice that we have 2 lines, each one with the VAT of the law 9,635, and here we can make the combinations we want. Here with your income withholding tax as well. This type of tax has a different calculation at the time of registration. We are going to indicate a preview. And we go to VAT movements. Here we have what would be the VAT base with the amount in each of the movements. 1,300 and 693. It would be 13%. We also have 2 lines that the system automatically generates the location that says goods and services of Article 19 of the law 9635. What does it do, or what is the amount of these lines? It is 50% of the sum of these 2 taxes. 1,300 plus 693, 1,993. Between 2 gives me 996.67. We go to accounting movements. And this amount of 996.67 would be, or we would take it as on part to the creditable VAT and the other as an assumed VAT. First of all, the system charges me to the creditable account. the sum of the 1,900, and then to that same account it takes out 50%, which in this case would be 996.67. Let's remember that it is the sum of 1,300 plus 693, and it takes it to a creditable VAT. And the other VAT, or the other 50%, would take it to an assumed VAT, a VAT of Law 19 of Article 9635 assumed. This is fully parameterizable. We tell the system to which accounting accounts we want each of the amounts to travel. Here, each movement of the account therefore takes related the type of document. That's it. Once we have verified and audited this transaction, we give it to register, and in this way, we have made a record with this type of VAT of the law 9635. 635. Here we have another invoice, the demo 05, and we also handle the remittance tax and digital services tax, which is basically the same as the previous one, but not assuming 50% but 100% of the purchase. Here we have the two services as remittance tax and digital services tax. We indicate a preview, we go to movements of VAT, and we see that we have digital services for 1,000 and remittance tax for 1,900 gives a total of 2,989, creating two lines of remittance tax for me, in which these two lines will be useful to distribute to what would be the accounting accounts, assuming me 100% of that type of tax, recognizing first of all the remittance tax as well as the digital services tax, and then creating for me what would be the credit of that type of taxes, and then we assume 100% of this type of taxes, that this account is an example account to see the behavior. It also has its relationship with the type of accounting document, and finally we give record to this type of transaction. Is it okay? In the module of purchases, we will also find the debit memos. Although it is true that Business Central does not bring this type of document as standard. We have created the purchase debit notes, having two pages, one for the construction for the debit notes that are in process, and another one for registered purchase debit memos. Okay, Business Central does not come standard with this, which we have developed for both the purchase and the sales module. Let's create a sales invoice, and let's see the behavior of the electronic stamping. Here I am going to select our customer, which already brings me by way of suggestion the electronic ticket. In this case, we are going to activate it. And also the code of economic activity, which we can also modify inside the document. Select if it is not subject, if it is export or other. We are going to sell this product, and we say the quantity of 10. We have the different tax codes, and we are going to be able to link also the withholding and the additional tax that is also given by the item. By way of suggestion brings it, in this case I selected. In addition to this information, different catalogs and codes linked to this XML construction are required for electronic stamping, that will travel to electronic stamping. For example, we are going to enter the article, and in the article we will find what would be the CABIS catalog code linked to the product. When I call this product and send it to e-stamping, it already brings me by default what would be the catalog code. Here we have all the codes loaded, as well as the units of measure. We have the Business Central units of measures that we have in the environment, and the relationship with What would be the units of measure catalog for electronic stamping? As well as this type of information, we also have the DGT code of the economic activity, the electronic ticket, and in terms of payment that we can link to the client so that he can bring it to us in a suggested way. We also have the relationship of terms of payment for the electronic stamping. In this case, I have cash payment and credit payment, and I have registered all the payment terms in Business Central with Business Central. All the payment terms in Business Central with their relation of DGT. We also have the payment terms and the relation with the DGT catalog. Here we have, for the example, one that is transfer, but we can load all the ones that we need and are updated. We also have foreign trade codes such as Incoterm and other codes for the topic of export invoices. Okay, once we finish, we register the invoice to be saved in Business Central. And this invoice is moved to registered sales invoices. We go to registered sales invoices history, and the logic of the electronic stamping is that already having the history of the sales invoice, we indicate to him to emit to electronic stamping. This arrives to our electronic biller, who has the direct connection with the fiscal entity, with the tax authorities, and in turn it returns us in this same section the answer of this stamping. We indicate to him to send to electronic stamping. It makes the construction of the XML. It says to me that everything is correct. I indicate to accept, and it says to me that the invoice was sent correctly. Here, moving a little more to the right, we have the number of stamping of Hacienda. We have error code, description of error, and we have the date and time of stamping and the validation that the electronic document was sent. Okay, we can also do that stamping inside the invoice, indicating sent to electronic stamping, and we also have the answer in the invoice. What would be the IRS number, date, and time of sending if there is some kind of error, the description and the error code and so on. Just as we stamp the sales invoices. We are also going to be able to stamp the debit notes of sale in the same way by indicating start send debit note. That debit note must be related with your different information and the related invoice. Okay, indicating here. Okay, it says it is already stamped. And that's it. This way here I will get an error. I want to show you that when there is some kind of error, it shows me that the description of error, the debit notes, is not a Business Central standard. Business Central does not have debit memos. By default, we have built this type of document in the purchase module as well as in the sales module. Having a type of document under construction, that is where debit notes are worked, and a history of debit notes in the sales module, being able to do the electronic stamping, so that we will also be able to stamp the sales credit notes here with the electronic stamping, error code, description, date and time of the stamping, effect of the receipt, and so on. Time of stamping here, it generates me the stamping, and it generated an error because it is a sandbox environment, and it shows me the description of the error if it is effective. The stamping here, it shows me the consecutive number of the electronic ticket. Okay, and finally we have the different accounting reports as well as reports and physical reports. We are going to start with the detail of materials and supplies. All the reports that I am going to show can be exported in Excel. We can export them in Word, Excel only data, and so on. Okay, here is the materials report with all the information showing me. First of all, warehouse item, the accounting account in the case of items, the average cost date of entry, date of exit, and other information. Now let's see the detail. Consolidated detail of purchases, and we also have the consolidated detail of sales. Sales, we are going to be able to filter a start date, a range of dates, and also the parallel of our reports in foreign currency here. I activate it and send it to Excel. Here I download the document. And we have the consolidated detail of purchases, showing me the date the invoice, the value, the amount, the amount, gross amount, discount amount with its parallel. In foreign currency here, the VAT in foreign currency here, the VAT in local currency here, the VAT in local currency. And also if it is engraved, if it is local, if it is exempted. All this information brings it to me in detail. Our report or consolidated detail of purchases, we also have the consolidated detail of sales. Exactly the same information, but for the sales module, we have the report consolidated of sales. We go to a preview in print mode, and it shows me what would be services goods in relation to a date of the year. We have the journal. We have the journal book that we can also show in daily currency. We can also export it. We can also export it to Excel on a daily basis. Can be exported in Excel. Here is the debit corresponding to the currency. To the debit and credit of currency and so on. We also have the general ledger. We also have the report, VAT report. Here we are going to see it quickly. But what are the exempted taxes printed? What was the amount, the subtotal, the VAT refunded, if any? And if so, what was the amount, the subtotal, the VAT
credit
refunded,
note
or a refund, and the total input VAT to each of the tax codes? We have the withholding report. And we are going to be able to do different types of filters. Filter by withholding. Here it shows me what it would be. The withholding report. Here we have the withholding report, withholding base, amount, percentage, and so on with each of the information. Finally, we have withholdings by clients, withholdings for suppliers, and we have the statement. Income tax return. Here we have it. Income tax return. We are going to have a detail of all information necessary for the declaration of the done 104, the sales in the period, the sales subject to exemption, the sales in the period, 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 and all this combination in an automatic way. And it automatically downloads me the report. Showing me the purchase of goods and services which were affected with the different tax codes, which were local imported, and taxes, which premises were imported, and other information. Well, not being more, I invite you to give me like the video, subscribe to our channel, and activate the little bell of notifications. Also, if you want to know more about our locations, such as in Colombia, Chile, different countries in Latin America, Chile, different countries in Latin America and the region. Also our flagship product, LLB retail trainings, webinars, etc. And much more. I invite you to visit our website, in which we will leave the link in the description of the video. Thank you, and see you in the next video.